and welcome to a brand new episode of the Show. We are two geeks who talk about everything. My name is Aaron. I'm joined for the first time ever by Crypto the Super Dog here. His name actually is Crypto. There's nothing super about him. But on the other end of the Zoom call, I'm also joined by my cousin Landon, as always.
And my special guest, Bella.
Yeah, we got the Legion of Super Pets. You'd think that means we're talking about the Legion of Super Pets movie that came out last summer.
These are our dire wolves.
Yeah, sure. Dire wolves indeed.
Oh my goodness. We have our dogs with us this time. If you are listening and you cannot see, just know they're awesome. And Aaron has got a new dog, and this is like epic. This is huge. This is like a huge deal.
Yeah, it really is. This is the first life other than my own I have to take care of in my adult life. So
finally, an opportunity for the maturity he's always needed.
I kill houseplants, man. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I rescued him from the SPCA earlier this week.
That's awesome.
It was, I guess, love at first sight. We'll go with that. But he's super smart. He really is. He's had a few accidents, but I mean, he's in a strange place.
Yeah.
But he
already more than you have. I mean,
hey,
for sure.
we all have our moments. But it's clear he already adores me for some reason, because he's constantly wanted to be in my lap like this. And I'll be honest, I wasn't gonna have that when I'm sitting on my sofa. I was just gonna, this is me time. He's got his dog bed over there. Get comfortable, buddy. And
I love it.
He sleeps in my bed too.
I was going to ask. That's great. So we did not have Bella sleep with us for some time, but when we did, life-changing.
Yeah.
A great deal of comfort. I mean, other than the times in the middle of the night that she decides to go horizontal when like the wrong way of the bed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like she goes the long way instead of the way we're
pushing
going.
Your feet off the bed.
And it's just
or
like
your head.
Hey, what's up?
I find myself throughout the night progressively pushed further and further against the wall, which is just great. Thanks so much for that, Crypto. Great. Now I'm gonna put you down.
Crypto, nice to meet you.
Now go lay down.
I've only seen the pictures on Facebook, so now I got to meet Crypto. But we are here to talk about Game of Thrones.
Yes, good old GOT.
I'm so excited to talk about this. But hey, as a disclaimer, so we have kids who watch our podcast here and also listen in. This would probably not be an episode for you, because this is something that's more for adults. And I wouldn't also want to allure any kids into watching Game of Thrones, because really it needs to be something that you watch with an adult. So if you're listening in, you're a kiddo, this is definitely one of the ones that you want to be able to talk to your parents about first. And if they say it's okay for you to watch it, then there's something wrong with them. So that's
until you reach like a certain age.
Yeah. That's for my kids, 25. But I'm
not sure I'm old enough to watch the show.
Because we're going to talk about some topics and some elements. So this is not a spoiler warning as much as it is a your mind will be spoiled warning. So this is 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Yeah, there's no actual spoiler warning for this show at this point. No. It's been off the air now for 4 years,
something like that. COVID messes with my mind.
I know. It's like those years didn't actually exist. So
I have no idea often what year
it was. It was pre-COVID though, right? So
yeah,
I think its last season was 2019, season 8.
Yeah,
does that sound right? So yeah, 4 years ago.
That does sound right. It ended pre-COVID.
Yeah. I was still living in Blacksburg at the time, and I moved here in August of 2019. So
yeah. So anyway, this show is been lauded by many as one of the greatest shows in all of history. And to a point. No, that's true. But Greatest Epic Journey is at least televised.
Oh, sure.
I remember when this show came out. I need some stats, man. You're the stat man. I know you told me to do what I'm.
Oh gosh, I'm not. I'm not prepared for the stats on this one.
I know. So let me just utilize old Wikipedia here.
way to be
Fail.
prepared for this conversation, man.
Yeah, I'm not that. That's not who I am.
Dude,
in this
stop.
podcast. Between the two of us, you're like the cynical smart one, and I'm
Stop
like
it.
the fun plucky guy.
Stop getting into my wires, man. Sorry, the dog is
Yeah, crypto.
lay down.
I like it. All right. So anyway, let's talk about history here. So themes. So March 2nd, 2010 was when it was ordered, first aired. April 17th of 2011 is when this started out. So I remember, now it wasn't 2011, it was more like probably for me 2013 or something, of 3 seasons in. I was like, man, I keep hearing about this Game of Thrones that keeps getting like pirated and bootlegged. And I never really heard of that kind of thing before, where people would pirate or bootleg shows. But it became a super big deal after season 1 that people were just like going on, and because they didn't have access to HBO, they would like record it and then resell it or make it available to the public. And that was like huge. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So I guess was in sort of the same boat. I don't think I got involved with it until season 5, actually. And the reason I was able to start watching it at that point and get caught up with the first 4 seasons before the 5th season started was because a friend of mine was kind enough to let me use his password with HBO Go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to give everybody context as to the popularity of the show, if you don't already know this, and I'm just going to lay it out now instead of going through season, but the fact is that season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 all were in the 90s. In fact, above 90 and above in the Rotten Tomatoes score. Season 8, the final season, was a 55. And so you can just tell from that exactly how fandom thought about the final season, which we'll talk about. But the point is that every season up to the last one was critically lauded as incredible, and rightly so. Fantastic show. I will say that as we talk about the different the different aspects of the seasons and the show in general, it definitely changes, and you grow with it as it changes as a viewer. So, Aaron, I'd like to know your thoughts of Game of Thrones.
So my thoughts for this initially. So let me put it this way. Let's talk about books being translated into TV shows.
Sure.
I think that is a brilliant way to do it. Instead of taking, so we can use other examples as well. Like, so you got Game of Thrones, and it seems like a great way to do these series of novels is to take a book and translate it into a season of a TV show, right? So like we've seen that recently with Reacher on Amazon, on Prime, where they took the first Jack Reacher novel, The Killing Floor, and made it into, I don't know, a 12 episode run. And the second season that I don't know if they're still filming it or if it's already done, like it's coming, but it's based on another book in that series, right?
Right.
And now there's even talk of rebooting Harry Potter and turning it into a TV series, basically doing the same thing, where each season is going to be one of the books, and
meant to be more true to the books.
Right. And so that kind of thing to me makes sense. When you translate a book, especially a series, into a television series, it makes more sense than turning them into movies, because with a movie, you've only got like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours at best if it's epic enough,
right,
to take all of the information that you are gleaning from this epic novel, and you're turning it, you're trying to squeeze it into 3 hours worth of unless it's The Hobbit, then of course you're trying to get 3 movies out of one tiny little book.
Right.
But with Game of Thrones, if they had done a movie series with these novels, it wouldn't have worked as well,
It would
because you've
not.
got
No.
such an incredible cast of characters. You've got all of these epic storylines crossing each other and taking place over the course of time, that
Right.
for it to be a TV series is the only way to really do it.
Absolutely.
So like I'm looking forward to more of these series that get turned into TV series. The only problem with, I think, with Game of Thrones is that unfortunately, George R. R. Martin has still not completed the book series, and so once they ran out of source material,
They made it up.
they made it up as they went along. And
Yeah.
does that, can we say that it was true to the characters that he had written, or was it, I mean, you look at season 8 and how disappointing that was for a lot of people, and I feel like that says a lot.
It does.
So
It does. You're right.
as popular as Game of Thrones was from the beginning, can we look at it as, was it a mistake to start making it in the early 2010s without having the completed work from George R. R. Martin?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that when you have like the studio working very hard on making sure that there's character development, what they did with Jamie Lannister, what they did with all the characters, really, Kit Harington, or as Jon Snow, it was a great progression, and the critics show it. I mean, you're talking about a viewership that went from 2 million viewers in the first season all the way to 14 million by the final season. And so you
Right.
can feel this crescendo progression by which they really did good, even beyond what was in the books. However, could they land the plane? No.
Did they crash it?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm always, as you know, the enthusiast with stuff other than Shazam too. And with this series, although the final season did not end the way that I would have liked it, I had become so invested in the storyline that I accepted it. And I look at things, and this is the same way I feel about Star Wars and the latter sequels. I look at them and I say, yeah, I mean, it was a progression of story that led to a conclusion, maybe that I wouldn't have thought would have been as epic or awesome as it could have been, but it happened. It's fine. You know what I mean? And I move on. That's how I felt about the last season of Game of Thrones. But before we get so far into that, I think it's good for us to talk about the seasons, because you start off with season 1 and you are introduced into something otherworldly. You're in a time that's definitely a medieval-esque time, and there's talk of magic, there's talk of supernatural, and if you didn't have
Dragons.
that first scene of the show, which was a pretty frightening scene,
Oh yeah.
with the walkers, I think if you didn't have that, it would have been hard to kind of grasp people. You have a whole lot of people, for example, who are into Vikings, the Viking shows that are out. There's a few different ones, and that's awesome. But it doesn't have the critical acclaim that, say, Game of Thrones does, because what Game of Thrones did in that very first scene was, it was like a, what the heck, this darkness that's looming, and then you just sidestep,
And they don't mention any of that again until the next season, do they?
No, I know. They
Yeah.
don't talk about it. You got the kid who comes back, that he's a deserter, but you also know that you'd be a deserter probably too, because he has seen something that's real. They don't believe him. And you got the duty of chopping his head off, which good old Ned Stark, Sean Bean, does appropriately. But that's it. Now you're into the political drama.
And
That's where it stays.
honestly, I wasn't hooked on it until the end of that episode. Honestly, when Jamie pushed Brandon, was it Brandon
Yeah,
pushed
Brandon
Brandon
Stark.
Stark out of the window of that tower, and I was
Right.
like, no, you did not.
I know.
I
And
was
that,
like, how do you kill a kid like that? And then for him to survive, I was like, what is this sorcery? And so like I was done. I was hooked
you
on it from the
you're
start.
hooked on it. But if you think about it, that sort of thing between what happened in the first episode and what happens at the end of that episode, the fact is that it was almost the reflection of what we see throughout the entire series, which was your expectations get blown. Your anticipation of what's going to happen may not happen. Characters that you think are going to live die. Ned Stark, Sean
Oh
Bean.
yeah. You think Sean Bean is going to be the like the main protagonist for the entire series, and by the end of season 1,
Quite the it was like Braveheart, you're just like, well, all right.
I was okay with that. I mean, you know, he was a historical figure. He had to die at some point.
Everybody has to die at some point. But like that, just and you see these kids, you see Arya and you see Sansa and Bran and Jon Snow, and of course oh shoot, who's the brother? Who's the older brother? Shoot.
I don't know. He dies with an arrow in his back.
No. Sorry. That's my
Poor
bad. That's
kid.
my bad. That's Rob Stark. Gosh, Landon. But you get to know all these characters, and you don't really understand how evil some of these people can be, and how the people who are very sinister and evil, like Jaime Lannister, ends up being someone you actually care about throughout the seasons.
Well, I mean that raises the question though: are they really evil, or are they just opportunistic and willing to do whatever it takes to see themselves succeed? Like, does that really you really consider that evil? Now, I would argue that Ramsay Bolton, pure evil,
Pure evil.
and
Sadistic.
but as far as like Cersei Lannister goes, I'm not sure I would call her evil. She does some pretty despicable things, yes,
Right.
but for her, it's always a means to an end, and that end is seeing herself in power.
But I do think that you look at her and her backstory all the way to her being a kid, and it comes down to some really basic elements. What I think is thematic with the show, with characters, is there are certain things about them that are true, and despite their circumstances, up and downs, those things remain true. Jaime Lannister going back to Cersei Lannister is appropriate in the end. That's appropriate, and maybe you don't like it. Maybe you're mad that he didn't stay with Brienne of Tarth, but maybe it's just like, but of course he would go back to Cersei.
See, and that actually did make me angry because I thought all of this character development that we've had over the course of I don't know what the previous 3 seasons,
Right.
and he's just throwing it all away to go back to Cersei.
But don't you find it, even in life, you look at people who end up going back to familiarity and going back to something, even trying to redeem something, find value of something, or even die for something that maybe in the end, it's just like, this is not healthy for you, and people end up doing that, whether it's a codependence or whatever it is. But I think sometimes that happens. There are other things though that really mess with me in a different way, like Bran Stark. His storyline was always, from start to finish, frustrating for me. I liked him in season 1, and then ever since, and maybe a little bit of season 2, but after that, not a fan.
The whole three-eyed raven thing.
Yeah, and it's not that the three-eyed raven thing couldn't have been cool. It's just, I think that what they did with it was they didn't expound enough on the. I mean, they gave backstory on it. It didn't mean anything to me. I wasn't invested, in that, that lore per se. I'm far more invested in learning more about the Valyria, and then what I get in House of Dragon now, and getting the backstory or learning more about Valyria, than I am in learning about, the backstory of the three-eyed raven and that whole jazz. But everybody's different with that side. I think everybody would agree, though, watching Jon Snow's progression and Jaime Lannister's progression and Daenerys Targaryen, those characters, or even Tyrion, good gravy. Who wouldn't say Tyrion's their favorite character ever, right?
So there was a point, I guess it was in season 7. Yeah, it had to have been. When Jon Snow finally comes to meet Daenerys, and Tyrion is her hand, right?
Right.
And I was like, oh crap, these are my 3 favorite characters in the entire series, and they're going to be in the same room together. This cannot be good. Something bad is gonna. I mean,
right.
The fan has been turned on, and the poo is in flight. I mean, it's about to hit. Something's gonna happen.
Oh man.
And I mean, thankfully it didn't at that point, but it was just like, oh, this is not gonna be good.
Oh man. But I mean, I think the hard part about it is, there wasn't anything about Daenerys Targaryen that wasn't necessarily true to her history, her family, her rage, and what happens with Missandei and all of that. Yes, appropriate. I can see how in the writing room they're like, it's a tragic tale. However, I think as a romantic, I go, yes, that could have happened, but that's not what should have happened. And I think that's where most of us fall. Most of us look at it and say, we've watched Dany be influenced in a wonderful way by Jorah, and even by Jon, eventually, and Tyrion, especially, in the middle. She had, so her choices and her end almost were like it was for nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what hurts the most. It's like someone like that had a progression, and maybe it wasn't her lineage to be rage filled and crazy about things, but at the same time, we would like to believe that Dany would have chosen and remembered what her valued advisors would have said to her.
I do have to wonder at this point, how many parents regret naming their daughters Daenerys or Khaleesi over the past decade? I mean, after season 8 came out, I'm like, oh no.
Given that we named our kids after characters that and actors that we liked, I'm glad that my kids were born before this.
Well, see, this is why you wait until the end of a series to find out. All right, how does this character turn out in the end?
Probably
best.
Do
they have a good legacy or a negative one?
Now, I think that when
I named my kid John after John Kreese from Cobra Kai.
Yeah, done Jon Snow.
Solid guy.
Jon Snow, though, I don't feel bad about his character and his progression. Him going back to the wall is just fine by me. I mean, I can see his duty, his life, even if he had gotten the chance to be on the Iron Throne and just
he never wanted it.
He never wanted it. Yeah. That's the key.
I think he would have been content to be the king of the North.
Right. Exactly.
But for him to go back to the wall, I think at the end of it all, when everything was said and done, I think was fitting for him.
Yeah, I do too. Now they have talked about having a show that's going to be a Jon Snow show. So
yeah, I've heard.
We'll see.
Will that happen?
Now I remember. Let's go the other side. Let's talk about. Obviously, we said Ramsay Bolton, evil, but let's talk for a minute about little Jack Gleason. Poor guy. Poor Jack Gleason.
Jack Gleason.
Well, who's other than Ramsay? Who else would you say is pure evil?
Who's Jack Gleason?
Jack Gleason.
Jackie Gleason, the actor.
Jack Gleason is our buddy Joffrey. That's the actor's name, Jack Gleason.
See, I think Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners.
I know you do, but Jack Gleason is the actor's name who played Joffrey Baratheon.
Oh well, let's
talk about Joffrey.
Okay. There are a number of very satisfying deaths in this series. His was probably the first and most satisfying.
I've never seen a death that was more fitting. You know, he was the worst. I mean, and the poor guy, the actor, he later, you know, he ended up doing puppetry, I hear, and
So he can't show his face anymore.
he pulled away. He pulled away entirely. But I mean, this is the kid. I don't know if you remember from Batman Begins.
Yeah, he was.
You remember he was the little kid who was, who Katie Holmes, you know, was caring for back when Scarecrow or when
yeah, he was one of the kids that lived in the Narrows, and
in the Narrows, right?
Batman gave him some gadget. What was it, a telescope or something?
But anyway, so this is our little Jack Gleason buddy, and so he ends up being Joffrey, and Joffrey is just a little prick of a kid. I mean, he's just
he was from the start before he had any power.
Now, what he does, and him, you know, eventually, I guess the Hound, you know, runs down the kid that that they're playing with, and who ends up, you know, kind of who was with he was the butcher's boy.
Yeah, I think so,
or something like that. Anyway, leads to his demise. But even then, he's just a spoiled brat, and of course he would be. He's Cersei's son. Of course he would be. You know, King Baratheon is just drinking and messing around, and of course this kid would be messed up. But
and he's the product of incest, so there's that.
You know, sorry for all our West Virginia.
Easy.
Sorry, you have family in West Virginia. West Virginia.
Send all complaints to Landon, PO Box 28479.
Burbank, California.
Send all complaints back to Landon's home office
in Burbank,
in Gary, Indiana. Charleston, West Virginia.
I'm trying to remember the point at which I thought that Joffrey was awful.
Episode 1.
No. No, he was awful. He was just an awful kid. But the part at which you start going, this guy, you know, this is going to be bad. I don't know. I suppose. I mean, yeah. I mean, he gets bit and he cries, but you just knew he was going to be a problem the second he pulls up his sword, you know, and does all that. And then he yells at Sansa when she's trying to comfort him. Oh, my prince. Oh, my prince. What do you think about Sansa, by the way?
I like her much better at the end of the series than at the beginning. She was a spoiled brat as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. From the beginning, but she was naive and stupid at the beginning instead of being the spoiled like Joffrey was, where he was spoiled and cruel. Sansa was just spoiled and naive. But toward the end, after everything that she went through, she became a much stronger character for it. I mean, it sucks everything she went through, but she, you know, when you think she's being manipulated by Littlefinger, it turns out she is using him, and you know, she's ready to take him out when the time comes. Another satisfying death
for sure. Did you find that Littlefinger was built up to be, and this is my opinion, so I wonder how you feel about Littlefinger. In the early season, yeah, no, I'm glad he died.
His death didn't come soon enough.
In the early seasons, I felt like there was a strong build that he could be a mastermind, you know, especially when, you know, our spider friend, for the love, Varys. He says the most dangerous man in Westeros is Littlefinger. And I felt like that was true and headed towards the course. But as we got into later seasons, it became less so. It became like, just an opportunist. You know, that's pretty much all it was. You know, watch out for that guy. He meddles. He gets in things. You know, and thank you very much for helping us get rid of Joffrey. But he didn't end up being as epic as I felt like it was building up for him to be.
I felt like his role or his ambition obviously he sought power and yes, was an opportunist who used whatever advantages he could find to seize that power. But I don't think that the power he was looking for was the Iron Throne. I don't think he had designs on himself sitting on the Iron Throne. But
Well,
I
I don't
think he
know.
wanted, I think he wanted to be the puppet master behind whoever was sitting on the throne.
I don't know. I might disagree with you there because I feel like they were pretty blatant on him trying to position himself to eventually ending up on the Iron Throne. What I
He
do
never
think is
had that kind of power, though. He was
no, he didn't have that kind of power, but he and Varys had some pretty direct scenes where it was blatant for him to try to find himself there. But you could be right. I mean, either way, I think that this could be a scenario where the books and the movies or the show were deviating because you're following a letter of the law to a point, and then it starts to go another way, and then he becomes almost pointless, really.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he's one of those that once he was finally taken out was a very satisfying death.
And
And
the way he was,
yeah,
him pleading, and
yeah.
Arya's, and let's talk
I
about Arya.
mean,
I know
because
we're
when
kind
he
of
went
jumping
into
around
that,
here.
he thought that he was turning these sisters against each other.
He did.
And you poor fool. You cannot turn the Stark sisters against each other. It doesn't matter how many years
Doesn't
they've been
matter.
apart.
Nope.
They are loyal to a fault. And
Well, and
I love them.
Arya just handled business.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Maisie Williams, is that her name? Maisie.
Uh-huh.
What an actress. To be that young when she starts off and to progress, fantastic. How did you feel about her arc, especially as you get into the faceless man aspect? How did you feel about all that stuff?
A girl does not question these things. um I thought it was interesting. I would have liked to have seen more of that. I feel like there could have been more exploration and of her time with the faceless, um that maybe they didn't have the ability to go into all that. Of course, I've never read the book, so I don't know how detailed that journey gets in the series, but on the show, it kind of feels like it was not necessarily rushed, but truncated, maybe.
Truncate is probably the right word, but of course, you're again talking about a lot trying to be fit in
Yeah.
with it. Her experience and her training and the pursuit of her and her blindness, that was pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
For her to be trained up. Her journey with the Hound prior to that was one of my favorite story arcs.
I really did like their dynamic together. And then I love that because they were reunited there before the end, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
because she left him to die.
Yeah.
But
And
he didn't hold it against her.
No, absolutely not. And I think that was probably the most endearing thing about him.
Yeah. Well, you gotta love that. You gotta love him. But his relationship with his brother,
the mountain
was crazy. And so you see him as such a harsh character, and then you meet his brother, and you're like, and the funny thing about the books
before he was a zombie.
So and the details, the mountain was fleshed out far more in the books. Not a whole lot, but enough by which this was the one who raped and pillaged and burned the countryside. The mountain, was more than just this guy who's great in a ring fighting against Pedro Pascal. I mean, it was
crushing his head.
That was a hard scene.
Yeah.
I cannot get that out of my head. Nonetheless, he was a very, very strong, and you meet him You meet him when Arya's a prisoner, and it's not the same actor. But this guy was meant to be, pretty rough, and not just rough like big, but a dominant force, a general of evil, if you will.
Yeah.
When you meet him and he fights against the snake, what's his I forget Pedro Pascal's character.
Oberyn
Martell.
Martell.
Oberyn Martell, that's it. So when you meet him and this way, he's just a brute guy who's going to fight, and it's not like he has very much verbiage, to talk about. You can't imagine him being very thoughtful about anything.
Yeah.
And this guy was supposed to be more. So that was a little disappointing. It still accomplished the task though, especially with Oberyn's death, which again I cannot get out of my head. Rough. But anyway, so let's talk for a second about the White Walkers and the Night King.
More zombies.
This storyline is kind of put on the back burner. You get very, very little, slow burn all the way. And I remember the scene that really gets you back into it is the baby from that gets captured and taken for the first time when you see the Night King. And that scene, because you hadn't seen anything, you didn't know anything about the White Walkers except they're just zombies from the north, and that's it. But then you have this baby that's taken all the way to the Night King, and the Night King touches the baby, and the baby turns into one of them. And that, you're just like, what's going on? Then you're in it. Then you realize you've got a real threat, right?
That no one believes exists.
That no one believes exists. Now, how do you feel about like the progression of the story from that point on with the White Walkers and all of that? Were you like into it because of like it's supernatural? You got all that stuff going on. I mean, or was it just like, was that not very important to you?
I mean, yeah, of course it was important because this represented a threat to all of Westeros. But I would say for me, that wasn't as interesting as the political intrigue that went into, okay, who's going to be sitting on the Iron Throne by the end of this whole thing.
Right.
You had, all right, so you've got Jon Snow, and of course he has faced these the Night King and these White Walkers, and so he is aware, and he is trying desperately to find a way for all of Westeros to unite in some kind of fragile peace, because he knows that they all need each other to stop this unnatural force that cannot be stopped.
Right.
By conventional means. Like these are the undead. You kill them, and he watched it happen. He watched as all of the slain from both sides were risen by the Night King. And I mean, just the blank expression on the Night King's face being like, behold my power.
My gosh.
And everybody else, the living people were like, oh, crap, let's get out of here. And then it's almost like, and then all is lost when, they've got a dragon now that breathes ice flames out of its mouth.
That'll do it.
It was just, I don't know. There's a part of me that felt like it was too much to add to all of everything that's going on. But at the same time, they were warning us from the beginning. Winter is coming. Right. Like from the very first episode, Ned Stark said it as if it was this prophetic thing. winter is coming,
Right.
and we are not ready for it.
Right.
And throughout the series, all anyone ever did was show us how unprepared they were
Right.
for this threat when winter came.
Right.
And for for Cersei to see one of these walkers for herself and still refuse to aid in saving humanity, again, speaks volumes for the kind of character that she was.
Right.
I feel like for her, the threat of the White Walkers, her hope was that it would wipe out everybody else, and
That's
we're
exactly
fine
what
here
it
in the
was.
South. It'll be
Right.
fine
Yeah.
for us.
No, that's exactly what her thought process was. I appreciated the storyline of the White Walkers because while you have all this political back and forth and this tedious stuff between the Seven Kingdoms, the truth is that there was a force that didn't care about politics, that didn't need to
Yeah.
deliberate or play games or the Game of Thrones. They didn't need to play. They just, as Neri says, she came to break the wheel. Yeah, the White Walkers came to break the wheel too. Freeze and break the wheel. And I think that was a helpful element because there's a point at which, as a viewer or a reader, you go, "What is the point? What are we doing? And who do I really want to be at the top?" Because everybody's flawed. I know that now. Everybody's flawed. Everybody has issues. And I don't know who would be best to be up there. And, you look at stuff like that, and then you have this real threat. And it's amazing how a real threat can unify, whether it's historically for us in the US here in the world, Pearl Harbor, causes, our country to decide we're not just going to aid with supplies. We're in it, at World War II. And there's just a common threat just kind of supersedes all that jazz and unites. So, I think it's a fun element. How they played it out, and in the end, that great scene at Winterfell was pretty incredible. I have up here my little bobblehead that I always have up here. This is Jorah Mormont and Daenerys Targaryen and their final fight, as they are before Jorah dies, unfortunately. But one of my favorite little character relationships was Jorah and Dany. But that's a story of redemption in itself right there. If you think about Jorah Mormont, just him being a poacher, condemned by Ned Stark, and then to grow and be an advisor and even with his plots to even kill Dany, and then for him to become what he became for her. That was a great story arc. This show, if anything, is about character development. And for people who are watching it or have not watched it or need to rewatch it, much like, say, something like The Walking Dead. My wife would watch The Walking Dead. And even though she is scared to death of zombies, and scary stuff, and all that, but she loved Walking Dead for the majority of the seasons because of the character development. And she loved Game of Thrones because of the character development. And this show is absolutely worth watching and rewatching for that.
Until the last season.
Until last season.
When all that character development gets just flushed down the drain.
If that was good, well, let me ask you this. What if we were to say, because obviously going from a consistent 90 to 96 or 8% on Rotten Tomatoes with the rest of the seasons, you get to that 8th season and 55. I mean, that is a huge bomb. I mean, tell me, what are your thoughts about where it went wrong, especially other than just saying everything?
Honestly, I'm not sure how it stayed in the 90s for season 7.
Oh, really?
Because I feel like season 7, I do feel like is better than season 8 for sure. But I feel like season 7 is when they started going off the rails because that's when they got shortened seasons.
Right.
And it's, I don't know. I feel like if they had had more time to actually tell the story that they wanted to tell, and they could have given a more compelling um journey for Daenerys to basically lose it at the end. I have no problem with her getting pissed off and destroying King's Landing the way she did. I get it. I completely understand her. She was ready to take vengeance on the Lannisters for what Cersei had done and for what she had commanded, and and in doing that, she takes that out on Cersei's people in King's Landing, which, all right, if you really think about it, once you win and you have the throne, these are your people now. You are destroying your people and your city. That basically you've already won at this point, but now, because all you're seeing is red, you just shout Dracarys and everything is gone.
On a side note, when I get really mad, I yell Dracarys. Nothing happens, but I feel a little better.
I shout things that we shouldn't say on here.
This is the Game of Thrones episode. You probably could.
No. Let's still try to keep it PG. No, like I said, if they had had more time, if we had 12 episode seasons in 7 and 8, like we had in previous seasons, I could see them, stretching out this story a little bit and actually developing something that made more sense.
Right.
Because again, I'm not saying I'm angry that Daenerys lost it in the end. I'm okay with that if that's the way that her character was meant to go. But don't, spend 6.5 seasons building up this incredibly powerful queen and who is benevolent, the breaker of chains. She's freed these slaves over and over again on the other side of the sea and comes back to her homeland and then snaps and does this incredibly horrible thing and kills thousands of innocents
right
on the back of her dragon. I mean, like I said, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with that if that's the way it's supposed to be, but it wasn't earned. Like it's the same complaint I have about Palpatine returning in The Rise of Skywalker. It wasn't earned.
Right.
It's just
dropped in.
Right. It's, for the sake of lazy storytelling, that's just how it is.
And I think that's fair. I mean, I do think that season 7, there was connections and things brought together, especially Dany and Jon Snow, things being connected together finally. That's huge.
Yeah.
And people have been waiting a long time. And so there's a great deal of relief that comes when those things happen. I think that, seeing, Sansa and Theon Greyjoy come back together, that was great, to see that. And even just seeing all of the family members get back together. And Cersei, what we get with her eventually, I don't know if it was season 6, was it, when she destroys the Sparrow and destroys all of their religion basically with the dragon fire. And that was incredible. So you have these moments that happen with each season that just kept leading up more and more and more. And then you get to season 8 and you're like, all right, here we go. Now, I will say that the whole thing that happened with Winterfell with the Night King was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's outside of that really hurts us all,
Yeah. That battle, the only complaint I have about that battle is that it was not very well lit. That was a
It was
very
hard
dark
to see.
episode.
Yeah, I know. You can't
Not in
watch it.
content, but it was dark because you can't see a thing that's happening.
You really have to watch it in the dark.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
to be pitch black in your house.
yeah.
To watch it.
That was a good battle, and we've glossed over it, but another. I just wanted to mention another death that was highly satisfying was that of Ramsey Bolton.
That guy.
Being
Battle of the
fed to his
Bastards?
own dogs.
That was such a good battle. And
Oh,
of course, you know that when he shoots the arrow and he kills Rickon,
yeah.
you're just like, oh well, here we go. Here we go. And that episode was,
I think that was the
something
only
else.
time I was glad Littlefinger was on Sansa's side.
Yeah.
Because he pulled through with the additional army, right?
Yeah.
Coming
yeah,
at
he
the
did.
last minute.
Right at the last minute.
Yeah.
That scene though, you think about John and he had the not the army, but the wall of the dead, that mounted, because
Yeah.
all the people who were killed and couldn't even climb. You're trying to climb over it. It's just, and you're being suffocated by the immense amount of death. So as we round this out here, because I know we've kind of jumped around talking about character development. When you're talking about a show like this that everybody knows so well, I think you're just kind of it's some fandom to talk about the different things and the controversial moments. But what I'd be interested in knowing from you as we finish this out, what are the top 3, top 5? What are the top moments for you? And I'll share my own that in this show, in the entire series, that stick out to you, that you just that when you think Game of Thrones, you think about these moments.
We're doing 3 or 5.
If you got 5, throw them out there.
Well, let me do 3. The death of Joffrey.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Cersei blowing up the temple or whatever it was, which led to her second son just not even saying a word, just strolling out the window.
Just takes his hat off.
All right, that's it. Natalie Dormer's dead. I have no reason to carry on.
And that'd be true for many, I think. She did good. She played her role well.
She did. Now, you want to talk about somebody who could manipulate kings?
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, really, I feel like any pretty face could have manipulated those 2 boys.
I know.
She just happened to be really good at it.
Oh man.
One of the most satisfying moments in the entire series, when Jaime goes to kill Lady Natalie Dormer's grandmother.
Yeah.
What's her name? What? Help me out.
The
old woman.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Sorry, listeners, viewers. I can't remember her name, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
She's the the matriarch of this household.
Right.
And Jaime is tasked with going and poisoning her and killing her.
Yeah.
And not for the reason she deserves. Like,
yeah.
They have this conversation, and she knows why Jaime's there. She knows he's there to kill her. And he presents her with the cup and tells her it's going to be quick and painless. And she says, that's more than I gave your son. Ooh. And that's when you finally know who was behind the poisoning of Joffrey. It was never Tyrion. It was never Sansa. It was never Littlefinger. It was this sweet old lady. And she tells Jamie, tell Cersei that it was me. I want her to know that it was me. Oh, I loved her character the entire show. She was one of those, old people eventually get to the point where they say whatever they want to say because who cares? Like, what do they have to lose? When you reach a certain age, I'm just going to say what I think. I don't care what happens there. You can't do anything to me that, it's going to hurt me. I mean, in reality. And she was that kind of character from her introduction, and at her end, she was still like dropping truth bombs. And I love that about her.
Yeah.
And oh man, I thought that was and the look on Jamie's face when he realizes what she is saying to him.
Yeah, she was it was Tyrell. It was
yes. Oh, thank you.
The lady Tyrell. But so there are so many characters and so many scenes that are incredible. Battle of the Bastards will be a scene for me. Joffrey's will be as well. The Red Wedding, even in the book, especially, but as it led to that, and I'm reading the book and I'm going, wait, what? Because I then I go
was
back.
it as shocking in the book as it was on TV?
More.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think because you're going through so many things and you have so much focus, much like in the first season with Ned Stark. You're looking at it and you're like, this is Sean Bean. You don't kill Sean Bean unless you're Pierce Brosnan. You don't kill Sean Bean.
What are you talking about? He dies like in
Ford.
most of the things he's in.
I know, but it takes somebody like Harrison Ford or Pierce Brosnan to kill him, Anyway.
Or an orc.
Now that was still how many arrows went into Boromir's body?
It took 3 and he was still alive.
He was still alive.
Still fighting.
So, but I mean, this scene, you get to it, and Robb Stark and Catelyn are just not to be beaten. The thought is that these are major characters. These are the ones who are going through, and of course you have the side characters, but for them to just die, especially to Filch from Harry Potter.
That was another satisfying death from Arya's blade.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Red Wedding, that was
and the music.
So unfortunately I knew about that before I saw it.
Heavy though, I would imagine.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I remember, so when I was binging those first few seasons all at once, and we get that was into season 3, wasn't it?
I think so.
Where you get to the Red Wedding, and like I was anticipating it. I was like, when does this happen? I know it's a bloodbath, but I can't remember like who's involved, who gets killed. And so, when it was like basically wiping out the Starks, I was like, oh man, that was rough. I love, so I don't know if you ever go on YouTube and watch reaction videos, but there are some people like they will record like their significant others watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
And like some people, like it's so crazy to see the look of shock on some people's face. Some people break out into
crying
sobs.
I know.
Like, these are people you personally knew and you just watch them get slaughtered.
Well, the second that Catelyn pulls up, like you hear the music, and Catelyn knows it first. Like she's got it.
Yeah. She sees the chainmail.
She sees, and she pulls up Bolton's arm and sees the chainmail. And at that point, you're like, wait,
this is not
good. No, this is a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. But still, it's not like, no, you're not going to die. And then when they are killing the girl, the nurse, the pregnant nurse.
Yeah. Robb's wife.
Like, no. I mean,
just brutally gutting her.
It was.
We have to make sure that we kill the unborn child as well.
Such a horrific scene.
The Lannisters send their regards.
Oh my gosh, so horrific. So, I think, that was probably one of the strongest moments for me for the show. And Jon Snow dying and then coming back, that was a big moment. There was quite the gap of time when he dies and he gets killed. And after you've been through so many seasons of things like this happening, you're kind of like, you're gonna kill him. Now what do you got left? You know what I mean? You're just mad,
Yeah.
And then there started being the rumors, and just people talking about the possibility. And sure enough, he comes back. So I mean, that was for me. And if you weren't a person who had read anything, about any of the books, because for me, I didn't pre-read the books before I watched the show. I read the books as I was in the middle of the show, and I didn't catch up I didn't get to the end of them until after I had watched up to maybe the 6th season or something like that. And so I was following along, and you start to see the deviation. One of the deviation points that I want to bring up is what happens with Catelyn Stark.
Does she not die in the Red Wedding?
So she dies, but she comes back to life, and she is resurrected as a character. She cannot speak because, remember, she is cut to the bone,
right,
throat. But she is a character who is brought back to life, I believe, by the same that brought Dondarrion back, and she is a source of vengeance that scours the land. If there's one thing that many fans are frustrated about the show, is that they did not bring Catelyn Stark back in that regard. And so that was one element. But all right, so before we move on to trivia, I want to ask you if you have anything you want to add else about this fun show.
No, not really. I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it up until a point.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's still like, even with the problems that I have with the ending, and again, feeling like some of the story points were not earned, it was still entertaining.
Oh my gosh.
From start to finish. Good. It was so good. It is what it is. And I it's not one that I've rewatched, but I'm sure that at some point I will. I feel like it will be worth a rewatch at some point.
I watched it like 3 times, so I mean, I'm probably going to watch it again.
when I can, devote the time to it, I'm sure I'll do it again. I've got HBO Max.
I don't know if you do this, but I have shows that I will watch ongoingly in the background. Right now, I'm watching Walking Dead over again, and I'll hit Game of Thrones again after this.
I don't do that with dramas though. I do it with comedies.
Oh, like The Office?
Yeah, I'll watch The Office, Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Friends, New Girl.
Yeah, and just roll through them.
Yeah,
it's fun in the background, I mean, but
that's my background always when I'm working from home. Yeah,
there you go. All right, so real quick before we go to trivia, I just want to do I want to throw some names out here for any viewers or listeners, because there were so many great characters that we didn't talk about that we just don't have time to. But there's just there are so many characters that you'll remember fondly. Of course, we talked about Daenerys Targaryen and Oberyn Martell. Lyanna Mormont, played by Bella Ramsey, is the actress who is now in The Last of Us, and she is doing a great job in that show. But she was memorable.
She was a great character in who she was in Game of Thrones. She was very impressive as a young actress.
She very much was. We also have, of course, Sophie Turner, who played Sansa Stark, Maisie Williams as Arya Stark, Kit Harington, Jon Snow. Lena Headey is the one who played Cersei Lannister, as you'll remember. Natalie Dormer as Marjorie Tyrell. The unbelievable performance of Peter Dinklage as Tyrion Lannister. Of course, we got Aquaman as Jason Momoa as Khal Drogo. Now, Nathalie Emmanuel, who played Miss Sandy, she's played in some other things as well. But
Fast and Furious movies.
Fast and Furious, exactly. Rose Leslie Egret, who was Jon Snow's love interest, and also
they were married in real life.
Kit Harington's wife. She was also, if you might remember, from A Downton Abbey.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
You know nothing, Jon Snow. The famous line. Richard Madden, who played Rob Stark. He's done a few things. Gwendolyn Christie, we'll always love, who is Brienne of Tarth. You'll know her from, of course, what would
Captain
you say?
Phasma.
Yeah, Phasma, of course, from Star Wars. She also plays in the new Sandman. She plays the devil.
Oh, that's right. I haven't seen that. She
Mhm.
was I was rewatching the Hunger Games recently. She's in I think Mockingjay.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
If y'all might remember Hannah Waddingham, who is from Ted Lasso. She plays his boss and the owner of the team. She played Septa Unella, who was the one who would say,
Shame.
shame,
Shame.
confess. Yeah.
Shame. I just love walking through the street, ringing that bell. Shame.
Nikolaj,
Shame.
yeah, that's what I say to myself in the mirror every morning. Nikolaj Coster-Waldau is Jamie Lannister. I believe he is in a new movie that's on, is it Apple, with Jennifer
Yeah.
Garner? Yeah, that looks good. Sean Bean, of course, is Eddard Stark. Let's also remember Aidan Gillen, Peter Baelish, who played Littlefinger. He was also in Dark Knight Rises, in the beginning of Dark Knight Rises Batman movie. Did not have a British accent there. Bronn, one of my favorite characters, Bronn, played by Jerome Flynn. Alfie Allen, we talked about him a little bit ago in our episode for John Wick. He plays Theon Greyjoy. Let's just say for a moment that Theon Greyjoy I absolutely hated until he met Ramsay. And then I felt really, it's almost like you're like, get him. Yeah, he's such a jerk. Get him. And then you're like, no,
he did not deserve what he got.
Not deserve that.
No.
Ian Glenn plays Jorah Mormont. Ian Glenn also plays Bruce Wayne / Batman in Titans. And he was also in I don't know if you remember the Tomb Raider. He was in the Tomb Raider movie as the villain. He's a great actor. Jack Gleason was Joffrey. And is it Joseph Quinn, the guy from Stranger Things season 4?
What?
Is that the actor who's in Stranger Things season 4?
Who did he play?
A guy named Connor.
Who did he play on Game of Thrones? I don't know who you're talking about.
Who is Connor in Game of Thrones? I gotta remember this because he was in the Stark. Yes, that is him. He was one of the soldiers that were stationed at the front when Arya arrives. That was a fun one. Remember when Arya arrives at Stark and she says that she is, Arya Stark, and they don't believe her? He was one of the 2 guards, that gets by. A little side role for the very famous actor now from season 4 of Stranger Things. Melisandre, we didn't talk much about the played by Carice Van Houten or Houten. We didn't talk very much about that whole issue of the gods, the old gods, the many-faced gods, and then of course the one god. Yeah. Did you find real quick, that it was somewhat anticlimactic, this lack of connection or battle even between, what would be the White Walkers and this, Lord of Fire? I mean, I thought I was kind of disappointed.
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of build up. Again, a lot of build up to nothing. And then her just walking off into the darkness at the end.
Yeah.
Felt kind of, I mean,
stupid.
That seems almost right for her character, but
right for the character, but not right for the whole arc.
But as far as the story goes, yeah,
Exactly.
Again, it wasn't earned. I don't
So
know. There's a lot about season 8 that they, I feel like could have done differently, or at least explained themselves a little better, and they didn't.
Yeah, for sure. We got Rory McCann, who was Sandor Clegane, or otherwise known as the Hound. He did an incredible job. One of the actors, Tom Washchika, who played Jaqen Hagar. He was the one that Arya was with in his training for the many-faced god. He was pretty great, I thought, in his role. He also ended up being in Stranger Things season 4 as well. And then we have Charles Dance from Tywin Lannister. Do you remember him from Aliens 3? Alien.
Yeah.
He played the doctor, right? Isaac Hempstead as Bran Stark. Mark Addy as the famous Robert Baratheon. That was a pretty great role for him to be in. Liam Cunningham played one of my favorite characters, which was the Onion Knife. It was Davos Seaworth. I don't know if you enjoyed him as much as I did, but I really liked him a lot. Michelle Fairley was Catelyn Stark. Iwan Rayon, I think, was Ramsay Bolton. If I said his name wrong, forgive me. And then the only other ones I'd like to mention are well, really just probably one more, which would be John Bradley, Samwell Tarly, one of my favorite characters as well. So that's, there are probably many others that people can remember, but my gosh, such an incredible
You didn't
cast.
mention Ed Sheeran.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Ed Sheeran and his wonderful, scene with Arya right there before she arrives or leaves, decides not to go. She's gonna go kill Cersei and decides not to.
Just should have.
She should have. It would have.
Anyway, thanks a lot, Ed Sheeran. Go write a song or something.
All right, here are your trivia questions, sir.
Bring it.
The Night King has so far been the main villain of the series so far. Obviously, this was written before. At the conclusion of season 7, he destroys part of the wall. He's able to accomplish this by using one of Daenerys' dragons to burn a hole in the wall. Which dragon did he kill and bring back?
I don't know any of those dragons' names.
This one should be easy.
Drogo? I don't know.
Viserion.
Viserion. Sure.
Viserion. All right.
So there's dragons' names.
As we talked about our dogs, Bella and Crypto, tell me, what was the name of John's direwolf?
Ghost.
Ghost. Good job. Good job. All right. So
really glad he survived to the end, by the way.
Oh, yeah. We also didn't talk about, okay, so it was Jon Arryn's sudden death that brought Ned Stark to King's Landing, where he sought the truth behind Lord Arryn's demise. Who actually killed Robert's first Hand of the King? Who killed Jon Arryn?
Was it Littlefinger?
Close. Very close.
Who was it?
It was Lysa Arryn. His wife. Littlefinger had convinced her to poison him.
So again, pulling the puppet strings.
Oh yeah, he pulled the puppet string. That was pretty good. It was good to see her satisfying death as well. Even if it was by Littlefinger.
My gosh. Out of the moon window or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, yeah. I want to see the
floor.
little man fly. All right, let's see here. So listen to this. In the first episode, King Robert Baratheon says, "In my dreams, I kill him every night." To whom is the king referring to and why?
I would assume he's talking about the Mad King.
Close.
Targaryen.
Close. Rhaegar Targaryen, because he had kidnapped Lyanna Stark. Not to know that they were actually secretly married and in love.
Oh, that's right. So he was the Mad King's brother, right?
He was the Mad King's. Oh, yes. No, was he the son? He was the oldest son, right? And then weren't the other ones? I think he was the oldest son. I could be wrong. Okay, one more.
Yeah, that's right, because that would make Daenerys Jon Snow's aunt.
Yeah.
I remember that being weird when they fell in love.
All right. So in season 2, who does Tyrion tell Varys he's planning on marrying to Princess Marcella? Sorry, I couldn't say it. Marcella. Now remember, this is the part where Tyrion tells Littlefinger, Varys, and oh, what's his name? The old one who was loyal to what's his name? He's the bad guy from Last Crusade. You know what I'm talking about.
Walter Donovan.
Yeah, Walter Donovan. Who does Tyrion tell Varys he's planning to marry Princess Marcella?
You're gonna have to rephrase that question. I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to ask.
Okay, so the ploy
He tells
was
Varys what?
Theon is trying, or sorry, Tyrion is planning on trying to find out who is feeding information to his sister, and he's trying to determine who the spy is. So he tells Littlefinger, he tells Grandmaster Pycelle somebody, and he tells Varys somebody that's going to marry Princess Marcella. He's going to pretty much marry Cersei's daughter off to somebody, and then whoever comes to him, or when Cersei comes back and says who she thinks it is, then he'll know which one was the spy, Cersei's spy. This is in season 2.
So he tells all of them somebody different.
That's exactly right. So, for example, Tyrion tells Grandmaster Pycelle that he's going to marry her to the kid from Dorne, that eventually she ends up falling in love with, but then he ends up telling, Varys that he's going to marry somebody. He ends up telling Littlefinger that she's going to marry, Robin Arryn. Sorry. So who does she tell Varys that she's going to marry?
I have no idea.
Theon Greyjoy. Now, here's a little follow-up then. Which one ended up turning out to be the spy?
I have no idea.
Grandmaster Pycelle. It was our Donovan guy. He ended up being Cersei's lapdog that would always feed her information. And so he knew he couldn't trust him. And he actually had him in prison, cut off his little beard at the end.
Just his beard. That's mean.
Yeah, he wanted to do a little bit more. Okay, and then last one. This is an easy one for you, but rounds it off well. What is the name of the continent on which most of the action of Game of Thrones takes place?
Westeros.
Very good, sir. And with that, we come to a conclusion.
All right. Well, thank you, Landon, for that history of Westeros and the Seven Kingdoms.
Seven hells.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it at some point.
So good.
All right.
So good.
Next week, get your list ready because we're going to be talking about great movies that you will only watch once.
Yep.
So these are movies that we consider to be incredibly well done. They're well acted, well told, well written, well directed. These are great movies, but
Just
they are
not,
disturbing or they are hard to watch and
so moving that you wouldn't want to watch it again and cheapen from the original experience.
There you go. So for whatever reason, these are great movies that you will only see one time and you just can't bring yourself to watch it again. So if you're at home watching or listening to this, get your list ready because we want to have a conversation about that. We will each have our own lists of films that we feel that way about. And we will be talking about that next week. In the meantime, let us know what you think of Game of Thrones. How did you feel about the first 6 or 7 seasons? And then how did you feel about season 8? I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, right? Most of the time.
You broke up when you said it too, but the numbers don't lie is what you meant.
That's what I said. The numbers don't lie.
They don't lie.
Yeah, that's what I said. They don't lie.
I believe you.
You know what? Hips don't lie either.
Yeah.
All right. So again, if you have enjoyed this show, please tell your friends, tell your family, give us a like, a subscribe, leave a comment. We want to hear how you feel about Game of Thrones. Who was your favorite character? What was your favorite scene? What did you think about old Bran winding up on the Iron Throne in the end? I mean, seriously, what's that all about? Three-eyed raven, indeed. He never saw that coming.
What was your favorite, most appropriate death? Did you like Littlefinger? Or did you like the little kid dying? Or
which little kid? Joffrey?
Joffrey, yeah. Joffrey dying, or Ramsay Bolton. Who did you?
That really was a good one.
That was a good one.
My own dogs won't attack me. Want to bet? You want to bet?
They're hungry.
Hungry dogs gotta eat.
Right,
all right, folks. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in. We will be back next week. So we hope that you have a great whatever it is, wherever you are.
See you later.